Like to call this meeting to order, 12:04. Roll call. Let me borrow your pen. Okay.
Guillermo Benavides,
Here.
Nick Benavides, Onyx Benavides,
Here.
Daniel de la Rosa,
Here.
Alex Arregui,
Here.
Eduardo Ochoa,
Present.
Ofelia Rizlan, and Luis Ramirez. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 3, approval of minutes. Thank you for emailing them early. Hope everybody read them. So I need a motion. No? Don't read any? Anybody read them? Because I did. Need a motion to accept as read.
I'll make a motion to accept the
Need a second? I second. Motion and a second to approve minutes as read. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public comments. Item 4. Anybody want to make public comments? Nope. And one more time, public comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'm hoping the mayor is going to show up. We talked at our last meeting about having the people that put us in these positions show up, and I guess I went first, and
Well, right now, mine is running for office or politics, so they ain't got time to even do city visits.
the mayor informed me if we had our meeting last week as regularly scheduled, he couldn't have come, but hopefully, I'm hoping he'll try to be here today. Anyway, I guess I would fall under public comment.
If he shows up, we'll let him see.
Right.
Item 5, water master plan update.
Okay, I guess, Mr. Chair, Gino Mattes for Little City Group, on behalf of LAN. For the record, we are submitting our initial draft of the master plan June 1st to staff, and then that draft will go back and forth between the consultants, and then ultimately within the next 30 days, the city council will see the first draft. Potentially, we would have that draft available for the advisory board somewhere in that month before council gets it. You all would have an opportunity to look at it in draft form. And that's where we are. We've completed the modeling, we've completed some of the CIP. We're still kind of working, tweaking the numbers with the financial consultant for the city of Laredo and Wildan, which is our financial consultant for the rates. We are updating some secondary water items that were still pending. But ultimately, by June 1st, we should have all of those recommendations in draft for the city staff to review.
Great.
So once we do have the master plan, I will go ahead and, I don't know if you all want hard copies or would you rather have PDF copies for you all?
I'm sure it's not going to be 2 or 3 pages, right?
260.
So
260?
I'd rather have a PDF.
I'll file a PDF.
That way I can.
What I'll do, I'll make some, get some flash drives so that way I'll have them delivered or issued there. Because I know 200-page document may be hard to email.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, really would.
We could do that. Or we could also stand it up on the Laredo Waterworks website where you can download it if you want to your computers. It might be easier for us to do something like that.
Easier to do that.
Okay.
That's fine.
But we will make it
Anybody want a hard
available.
copy?
I'll communicate that information once it's available where you download.
Just for, anybody want a hard copy? If not, then we're going to go that way. Okay. Thank you.
This being such an extensive document,
Yes, sir.
would it be possible, Mr. Chairman, to have let's say, workshop just for this committee, you know, and we could get familiarized with it? I know that I would benefit from something like that. Is that
I
possible?
don't see a problem.
We can make one of the meetings, the meeting coming up in June, just make it specifically for the master plan.
Yeah.
That's the only item on the agenda, and we can just get the highlights, and that way you all become familiar and communicate with your council or mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may, to Arturo, the point, the consultants had always intended to do the draft, take it out to the public, including the advisory committees, have them weigh in, give us their input. There are some impact fee recommendations that need to be made that'll be in that study. So yes, having a workshop with this committee, maybe a few others would be in order. And then ultimately, we would take that draft, after the council looks at it and says, okay, let's take it out to the public, we would take it out to public.
Yeah, 'cause we're gonna have to defend it.
Right. And as would staff and the consultants defend the recommendations that are being made.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, water quality assessment and optimization update.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. So as far as the water quality update, we are on the tail end of the supplemental studies that have, will engage us in design, longer term improvements. One of the biggest things that is coming down the pipe is chlorine dioxide disinfection at your water treatment plants, which helps chloramine stability, which is the disinfectant that we use for our water system, right? But again, we're wrapping up that technical memo we presented to the city last week. There's some additional information that they requested, references and other for other water treatment plants that use it around the state, and perhaps along the Rio Grande that have the same profile water source that we have, right? So the more immediate things that we're doing right now is we're staying very vigilant with water distribution and water treatment. We are in the summer months, and this is typically where we're high alert for nitrification. Right now, total chlorine levels are great. We've again talked to water treatment staff, water distribution staff. They're talking to each other, make sure that everybody stays on top of it. So that's what we got right now. I don't know if you guys have anything else.
From an operations standpoint, what I'd like to let the committee members know, this time in the season is the time where we should probably have to go into a chlorine conversion. That's when we have to convert from chloramines to chlorine, to all chlorine. And it may depend on how the residuals react, how much ammonia we're getting out there. And once we analyze that, then that'll tell us if we need to go into chlorine conversion. That's when we get that notice out, and more than likely it'll be for 30 days. And that's where I know the public doesn't like the smell of chlorine in the water, but it's something that we need to do because of our system and to, eliminate the problem of the bowel.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah, and
Without
just,
it, we have hell, and with it, we have hell.
and just so you guys know, that's
This thing is take care of the public, right?
as far as free chlorine conversions, those are seen as maintenance, preventive maintenance every year in other water systems, and it's ultimately used to prevent water flows. We don't believe we're there, but if we do get to that situation, we would definitely use our PR consultant, Liquid City Group, to start pushing out this, advisory, that just say, hey, we're going to go into a free chlorine conversion within a month. Like I said, we're not there. Total chlorine levels are great. We're controlling ammonia levels through the amount of water that we have in our system, through flushing, through sampling and monitoring. So, like I said, but it is something that you guys got to be aware of, that perhaps if it's not this year, next year, we would do free chlorine conversion, say around February, March, to get a clean slate for the summer months, which traditionally or historically here in Laredo, we've had issues with nitrification. But like I said, we're not there yet, but operationally, just that's something that just happens in water systems with chloramine disinfection.
And Mr. Chairman, to your point, because the community does have that fear of boil water notices, and that the city's always being reactive and then proactive, staff has instructed us to prepare certain communications pieces that we'll have ready well in advance to get out ahead of this and let the community know that this is not only a maintenance issue, but an issue that staff is acutely aware of because of the change in the temperatures coming so early this year. So we'll stay out ahead of this.
When you have those high temperatures, there is a propensity for a certain algae to form in stagnant waters.
Yes.
Is that Is that what that chlorine addresses?
Yeah, so chlorine is your disinfectant, right? What happens with heat is chlorine decays a lot faster with heat, right? And then it releases ammonia, and then the ammonia is what causes nitrification. It feeds the microorganisms, and then that creates nitrification, right? So the algae, I wouldn't be concerned. That's the disinfectant takes care of that. There's not stagnant water in your system. There's active mixers in your tanks. Water's constantly moving through the pipes, and when it's not, we have automatic flushing devices, or we have people flushing your dead ends. So that's it. That's how we keep water moving.
Similar to maintaining your pool. During the summer months, it gets hotter and hotter. You have to chlorinate more often, go clean more often, flush, back flush your filters.
Well, one thing that
Take sunlight for algae. And
sunlight.
close.
Yeah.
Take sunlight and lack of chlorine.
Yeah.
So that's why one of there's some people who had clear glass filters outside in the sun. And those filters had carbon in them. Carbon absorbs chlorine. So the filters were taking out the chlorine, the sunlight was seeing the water, that's how you make algae.
And the bad thing about it, that was an ex-employee, right? Who brought that up to light.
So yeah, that was.
And he knew what he was talking
But it got him the key to the city.
about, right?
Right? So it got him the key to the city. So anyways, yeah. But yeah.
But if you have stock tanks and the water's clear, what do you have?
Color.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have muddy water, nothing grows in it.
The reason I mentioned it is because I was in San Antonio recently, and one of the news stations had a little segment on that very issue on the algae that is more likely to show up in hot, summer months.
But
And we see it also in the raw water with the background ammonia that we see. And that's where we're trying to identify what is happening to our raw water so that we are able to react to it as it's coming in.
So yeah,
And
so
the plant has successfully been able to do that.
historically there's lack of water profiling, right? So raw water and also inside the plant. We're working with that. Jefferson as a kind of clean slate. The one that has a little bit of issues with that is El Pico, which the water that the sludge we throw back, and that's causing issues with our influent water. But anyways, it was kind of a process thing with the original design. But I don't want to get into it on that. But plant is doing great. They are operators now, and we said it before. It's a culture change for the positive, and they react to stuff, and then they're making decisions based on the knowledge they have, and their licenses, right? They're licensed for this. They're certified to be operators, and they weren't allowed to be operators in the past. So not by people that were there personally.
And just in the last, I'll say in the last month, we've gained 8 B licensed operators. So we're gaining more. From a B to an A or C to a B, and letting them operate the plants the way they're intended to operate. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I guess we can go on.
Okay, thanks for that update on those things. And, item 7, discussion of goals.
I know at the last time you mentioned I didn't receive any goals, so I just wanted to know if there's anything that maybe at the next, I think the only goal right now that I have is the master plan, discussion of the master plan.
Right.
So we'll get into that, try to analyze that, provide input, and just see what the committee sees in the master plan, so they can provide direction.
I'm glad this item is on the agenda because I'd like a little bit more direction, at least personally, on what this committee is supposed to, is entrusted with.
Yeah, no, we talked about that last meeting.
There's a lot of water issues out there, and I don't have the technical expertise. I know that we have experts in the room, but I'm certainly not one of them, and I would not be able to address a lot of, or think in a fashion to be able to contribute to discussion on some of the things that concern water issues. So I guess what I'm asking is, a little more direction for us committee members as part of this committee.
I think we discussed it last meeting where we're talking about why we were formed, and what we ended up being. We were secondary water source committee, and now we're the utilities committee. But I don't see any meat to the potatoes on this thing. I don't know if we're going to be championed with recommending or supporting or coming out in public or whatnot. I mean, I don't mind visiting here, it's good, but we really don't have much to take back to the public. I mean, I saw a demonstration on TV at the City Hall about water pressure and everything else. Not that I want to be notified every time a water line breaks. It's not where I'm going. But issues that eventually TV is going to reach one of us. And we're going to be going, I have no comment. Not that I want to comment. I've been through that with the phone company. But I don't know how we can support you, Arturo, right?
No, what I'm thinking is on the major issues, like say we have a major transmission line, I want to communicate that out as
Yeah.
to the committee.
Oh, yeah, of course, yes.
The chlorine conversion, that's why I brought it up,
Yeah.
because we're considering it. And the master plan is the first one. The next thing coming up is our CIP. I want you all to be familiar with the CIP.
Yeah.
So that way, if the public asks questions, what is the city doing? And then we give you the CIP, and you know the priorities that we've set
Yeah.
as a department. And that way you can communicate that to the public and communicate it to your council members. And the mayor.
Dang. It's going to rain.
We need it.
But the bottom line is, I know we all want to do something, and I appreciate lunch, but we really want to support you guys where we can. I think we talked last meeting about some kind of PSAs where we're talking about the water, because this town is really concerned. I mean, we're all concerned. I mean, we have a utilities company that they're cutting water lines, somebody said, well, they didn't even get permits, so I called the company and they did get permits. So somebody tried to make it sound like they didn't have permits, so that's why they cut the water line. No, these guys, they're under the gun, the company they're working for. And I know I used to fire a company like that didn't get permits. They try to circumvent the situation. Maybe not being located properly or something else, but there's a lot of gears to this mechanism in laying fiber cable in a subdivision that's been there for 60 years. So, but I don't, I've toiled with that, and I think we've talked about it enough to realize that it's more than just a luncheon club.
Right. No, but I like that you raised those issues that you raised. Those are the things that we can make as priorities or as goals on how to better communicate that, how to better manage that, and how to, because I'm trying to change the mindset of customers.
I'm sorry, what's that? We were just waiting for you.
Come on.
Muy bien, ¿cómo estás?
Mr. Mayor.
Just fine, just muy bien. What do you all want me to?
Well, you came just in time. Yeah, you came just in time.
How are you, sir? Hello, Mayor. Very good to see you. Just fine. Thank you for stopping in, sir. Thank you. Just fine. Wonderful. Thank you.
Right on time, too. The right question.
We were just mentioning you.
He was waiting outside for that question to be asked. Do a grand entrance.
Mr. Mayor, we were on item number 5, which is discussion of goals, and I brought up the subject of this committee as our chairman just mentioned right before he walked in, we had a previous goal in mind, that being a discussion of the secondary water source in previous meetings or whatnot, but I'm wondering if we can narrow and focus on what this Utilities Advisory Committee should be doing. Maybe secondary water sources one, maybe as Mr. Garcia mentioned, we should be familiar with the water master
Oh,
plan.
yeah, that's huge.
Do you have any
Oh, yeah.
general comments on what?
Garcia, and of course, staff knows very well where management and the city council stands on these issues. We've been having issues, as you know, so we've been addressing them through the help of Mr. Garcia and his people as well. So we do have that water master plan. We've embarked in a robust remedying course that we really had no choice at that point. And we take responsibility, and other councils should take responsibility as well. They kept on just kicking that can down the road, in spite of staff and management telling us we really can't. But politically, it wasn't a good thing to do, but in retrospect, it was a horrible thing to do. I know when I came in, I visited with Riazumia, the director at the time, and he quickly informed me that we had some serious problems. And of course, I was working with council to try to bring these things to a head. And it took me really about 3 years into it to try to get some consensus, and barely we finally got 5 votes. And that's 3.5 years ago or so, we finally passed a bond amount, or at least authorized city staff or management to go out on bonds, about $200 million, of which I think around 100 million or so have been expended. And it takes time to develop these plans, engineering, all of that. But by that point, it was a tsunami already, and it was way too late, as we know. So we're pumping in a lot of money. Hopefully we'll get multiple contractors at the same time trying to get these water lines replaced within a 5-year period. But within that, and the goal of council, and at least my goal has been, and others before me, is a secondary water system. We truly need an independent source. It's expensive, very expensive. As you know, and you probably hear complaints from the people. I mean, we can't afford it now. It's just so expensive. But yet, a city, can't. We need a dependable, sustainable water source, and we can foresee, just time in itself. It tells you that there'll be an accident, there'll be a drought, and so I would, at least from my end, encourage this committee to continue, even when I'm gone, even though there's still 5-6 months left, that I hope that we can do something on the secondary water source to continue bringing that issue, because it's a must. I hear from certain people that come to council and give comments that apparently the last comment I heard was that it is that it can be financed. I heard 50 cents or something like that, and all along I've been hearing it's a multiple of that. It's going to be at least $2, $3, $4, $5 more than what we're paying now. And I know the priority is to at least fix what we have to begin with, and then add to that. And that's going to take some convincing of the public that really the need exists, and that we need that. And what we're looking at in terms of a secondary source is a supplemental water to get us through, say, an emergency, but also, just emergencies, and in the future, I think, and I hear this too, that no, we have enough water to take us to 2040 or somewhere in there, because we've purchased these water rights. But we all understand that water rights are only good if there's water.
Keyword.
Water. You know, it's like, yeah, I've got the water right here, but there's really no water, and communities are competing now on both sides, and we're growing. And our agricultural needs are growing as well. So, no, it's truly a challenge. But the key is money. And if we can get grants to finance some of these things, and we have applied to the Texas Water Development Board for grants, and I think we may, you know, there's a good, strong likelihood that we'll get it, but it takes a year or two to get it programmed. But that's one source, and then the other source, of course, is us, you know, through the revenues that we receive from the water source, you know, from the water enterprise that we have here, to finance the rest as well. But the next 5 years, I think we programmed close to 200 million.
Yes.
And then, but that, see, it doesn't end there.
No, it continues, because
And it
whatever
continues.
ages, you have to start to replace. You replace your aging infrastructure.
No, ideally, when I first came in and asked Rhea, you know, I figured, you know, by now we should have a master plan, or at least a city, which we didn't, or at least it wasn't updated. You know, in my mind, I thought, you know, we've laid the last line. If the life of the line is, say, 40, 50 years, you know, within 40, 50 years, we should be at that point replacing that line. And I asked, you know, how are we in terms of the cyclical process that we have for replacing lines? And basically, we weren't even close. And when I heard that, I said, man, we truly have it's going to be a mess. But it takes council, it takes 5 votes to get things done, and it takes money, and people don't necessarily want to pay more for water. But water is truly an expensive commodity nowadays. You go to the store and people don't hesitate paying $1 or so for you know, bottling a small bottle of water or so. It's got to that point now, and we have to change that mindset. And this is where you all come in too, to help advise, counsel, and the public, you know, the people that you visit with, your neighbors, well, you know, when you visit with them, you know, please impress on them too that things are truly going to have to change if we want security and water sustainability.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any preliminary ideas or comments on where we should be looking for that secondary water source? Do you know?
We have some experts, and yeah, they brought some, and I think they're coming back with.
The reports are being updated. There's the groundwater in Webb County itself, and there's other counties, that Demet County, other counties that have resources available as far as groundwater. But again, the further you are, the higher the cost to convey that water to us. You're going to need a pipe, a system, and then if you're going to have it guaranteed, is that an annual cost that's always paid, whether you use it or you don't? So there's a lot of factors in it. So that's what the consultants are
It's a take it or leave it. I don't know if you all are.
Take or pay.
The oil, yeah, no, take or pay.
Take or pay.
Yeah, it's the oil and gas industry, and take or pay. But that gives you, and I'm sorry.
No, no, you're
back,
fine.
yeah. So, yeah, no, but these folks from, and I'm not favoring anyone, and you know, obviously we got to get the best price, you know, water, yeah, best product for the best price. But they keep on insisting that it's very affordable, that you know, we can do it within the current rate structure, you know, bond rate structure that we have. So it may merit, and I know council decided last time in June you were there, that we should go out for it.
For RFPs, RFQs.
Just to see, you know, go fishing. You know, go see what we bring.
See what's out in the pond now. Maybe there's new technology, new vendors, new
Yeah,
providers.
just bring them in. Maybe you know, let them tell you basically how much they can sell it to us.
And also see what the state is offering. Are they going to be promoting regionalization?
Yes. So we have council authority. You know, council, you know, did authorize management to go out there and see what's out there. So I think we're preparing some sort of a
Yes,
package to go out
we're
there.
going to do an RFQ or request for proposals on the groundwater or alternative secondary source water.
And I would suggest, President Arturo and Equipo Arturo, and I know he's doing that, but, if Arturo hears it from you all on a frequent basis, then hopefully we can get it out soon, so we can get it.
Pre-pandemic, we were at the precipice of where we could have chosen a secondary water source at that time. And it just, COVID killed a lot of stuff, not just people, but movements, and I'm talking about. The issue was not that get it here, it was what are we going to do with it when we get it, because we don't need water. We have the river, and that's an attitude that I'm a fisherman. I need water to fish on. And when you go down these spots and that lake is down 50, 60 feet, that means that we're not getting water downstream. And when they release that water downstream, because the water authority controls that for irrigation in the valley. So it's not necessarily for us, right? So to me, we need to find a factor here. The factor is, how do we utilize the water we're going to bring here? We need to incorporate it with what we have existing. That to me should be in the master plan. To say, I've got a 5-foot pipe coming from Denton County, where I hook up to, I can supplement these other stations, so we can use the source. But that's the thought at that time was, we're going to bring it to edge of town, it's going to be there, if we ever need it, we can hook up. And that was not viable, because we're paying for that water whether we use it or not, And so I think they suggested sell it to the adjoining cities to the east and to the south and everything else, because they have bad water. But we never went beyond that point, and I think that's when we got changed from a secondary water source to a utility, because we had a member that went to the council and said, anyways, politics.
Yeah.
But to me, that's always been the solution, is that's to bring that pipe, incorporate it, even though we got some fantastic plants and the river. But my biggest fear, Mayor, is if somebody malicious blows up a vehicle on the bridges with chemicals, and it goes downstream, all our plants are downstream from that Columbia Bridge. What are we going to do for water? There's not enough bottled water to handle the time. And to me, that in itself should be the catalyst to do the secondary water source, whether we park it or not, if they're relevant, because you don't react to the fire until the house is burning, right?
You need the infrastructure.
Yeah, we need the
You need that pipe down there to turn it on. And I would think that, once you turn it on, it's going to be more expensive, obviously, because the water's flowing. But to have it there, and that's a selling point also for industry, for other people that move into Laredo. We can use it as a marketing tool.
We have a secured source.
And that's value. It adds value to our city, to our businesses, to attract.
More than just trucking industry, we can manufacturing. But I've talked to I have a cousin in Illinois, and master form, and I said, come on down here, man. The wages and everything else, we work all year long. We don't work only 9 months out of the year because of blizzards and all that. He said, yeah. He said, but y'all don't have the water that I need. I said, we'll get it for you. Not knowing whether we could or not, just trying to encourage it, because they build tools and everything else. They need a lot of water to cool the metals, and so we ourselves hobble ourselves in industry, and we just can't have trucking as be the only one. If you're a manufacturer and you're in a trucking hub, it's going to be easier for you to transport your wares. So we have to incorporate it so the water comes into play again.
It's a basic element.
Right? Without water,
a person without water.
Water is life. Water is life.
Just extrapolate that, or grow it further, and then apply it to everyone. I've been talking. There's some discussions that I've been having with other mayors around the border. Sometime back, the desalination. The process of, Brownsville has a plant, and I think Corpus has a
Brownsville
smaller.
has one.
Brownsville, yeah, and I think there's some mayors there on the border that are prepared to, if we can get organized, but the cost is prohibitive. I think pumping water, say we're, what elevation are we at? We're about 3 something to 400 maybe.
Some points even at 500.
500, yeah.
On the subject of, other areas around us, you know, that could be affected by our water or vice versa. Nick, do you still sit on the Region M Water Planning Board?
And that's only critical, yeah.
I think we should have some contact with them, or they should know about us, or we should know about them, because would you kind of like explain what Region M is?
You know, what Region M is, we look at all
That's a
the
good
water,
program, yeah.
the
This
water
is
issues
critical.
from Eagle Pass all the way to Brownsville. And we look at all the communities, and we look at water usage, water needs, you know, future. We look at anything, any municipality. And I'll be honest with you, the Valley is probably 20, 30 years ahead of us. They have all those, you go to little rural communities that already have their own water source. Over there you have multiple water sources. It's very well developed. They're really sharp on water. But I really think, like for Laredo, what we need to do is we need to start selling this to the public now, that there is a need.
Aside from the river, what other water source?
Well, they have desal plants, and then they also have, they have good water
It's coming from the
wells.
Gulf, yeah.
Right, well, they have desal
Brackish
plants down
water.
there. Yeah, they have
Oh,
brackish
brackish
water.
water.
Yeah, they have their
Desal
brackish water. And then also they have the water wells, and we have a lot of water wells. I mean, it's more diverse than it is here in
And how
Laredo.
expensive is?
Well, they've already been developing it over the last 30 years, so they're way, way ahead of us. I mean, they're way ahead. I mean, we don't need to go too far, and it's a small body of water, but look at Casablanca. I mean, we need to go out there and get some footage of that now. Casablanca is gonna go dry. I mean, it's at the lowest level it's been in probably 30 years. You know, and people need it's a good time to shoot some good, we gotta sell it to the public that the need is today. And we can go to the Water Development Board and we can find, the money's there. The money's available to do these projects. You know, we get the updated water master plan and you know, we've gotta go for it. Look, it's something that we're not gonna need maybe in our lifetime, but we're gonna need that sooner than later. If you look at climate change, if you look,
Never say never.
What's up? Well, I hope, but we gotta leave this, if you look at the factor, I mean, sooner or later, this town's gonna be 500,000, it's gonna get on its way to 1 million, we're gonna need water.
Sooner than later on that happens.
Yeah.
But you said something, I think you indicated, and I know when I was on that board, that, you know, the lower valley, they really call the shots.
They do.
It's a Region M, you know, area, and it includes Laredo, it includes Webb County. And who called all the shots? The real
valley.
Their water
We're not
needs-
numbered on the
Their
board.
water needs it first.
No, but why? It's representation.
Right.
Maybe we should, you know, take, you know, more interest, and we appreciate the fact that you're there at least. But aside from you representing Laredo, who else?
Myself, Ria, Tomas, there's
Tomas is
only
still
3
on?
of us, yeah. At one time, well, Tomas was the chairman, he's not
But
the,
are they voting? You know, they
oh
vote.
yeah, we're all voting.
And what's the composite of that board?
Well, it's basically like from different areas. You have like Eagle Pass will have 2 representatives. Webb County, you have agriculture, the business, and municipality. And it goes down there. But you have in the valley, you get down there, you have every community representative. You know, you have McAllen, Harlingen, Edinburgh. You know, you have all those communities. So we're outnumbered on that board.
And they have multiple water
We-
districts.
right.
So
They
they have
have-
water districts that are also
It's like 30.
30 water districts. So here
I don't
it's
care for that system.
it's like Houston, right? It's like Houston. with the
Zapata,
ones,
Judge
but-
Rathmell's on there too.
Yeah, but I think it comes down to applications, and we have to have a project so we can present, and the key is that the Texas Water Development Board, because those are the guys with the money, but
Or just for example, we need to work together with Webb County. Because there's monies there for the colonias, for looping some of the systems that we.
where, at the Texas Water.
Texas Water Development Board, they're gonna, a lot of money's going to the colonias. And we need the county to help us for some of the colonia projects that we need to do, some of the water line improvements.
Sometime back when I was kind of running for mayor, you know, I thought maybe desal would be the future, and I thought maybe Baffin Bay is the closest bay, I think, to our region, and then it goes through, what's the city?
Rivera.
But I ended up, Falfurrias, yeah, and those, Hebron, Bruni, Oralton, Aguilares, yeah, see, all of those need, you know, if we formed a community, you know, or
A coalition.
regional approach.
But see,
yeah.
that's what we're talking about, secondary water source. And it was brought up by one of the companies that are trying to sell the water, bring it to Laredo, then Laredo sells it to them. So we can have that flow and make money.
Whatever works, and whatever's,
Yeah.
you know, the least expensive.
Because you look at the
so-
lakes to the west of Del Rio, all, they're finding old cars with, back in the 30s, somebody dumping bodies in there. They're finding all kinds of stuff. That's how low these lakes are. Amistad, when the lake drops 60 feet, you got all those Indian drawings in the caves and everything else that were swallowed up by the lake. I mean, there's places in the lake that's 210 feet deep. Yeah, and so, but they're all dropping.
Lake
The
Powell,
snows
Lake-
aren't, yeah.
Lake Mead is very
Lake Mead
real.
and Lake Powell.
The
Yeah.
winter snows and all that are not happening. Yeah, Lake Powell, Lake Mead.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the watermark and it's
The last
scary.
drought, the last bad drought, because we get the reports on it, which was, what was it, like 10 years ago, we had, or 5, 6 years ago, and I don't know if you were still on the board memo, but we get the reports as far as, during that drought, there was like some small communities that they got down to like just a 2-3 week water supply. There were smaller communities, but they had water for, I mean, fortunately it rained, but some of these communities were like, they had water for 30 days, 60 days, and then they were gonna,
But you take Lake Mead, it's not gonna, 4, 5, 8, 9-inch rain gonna fill it up.
oh yeah.
Jesus, that's years of drought, years of drought.
Weather patterns are changing, there's no doubt about it.
Because don't we have, we do have a drought plan, but,
Yes.
For example, once the water, we
just
have less water, then we go into conservation mode.
Right now, we're in voluntary mode, voluntary conservation.
Yeah, but of course, that hurts us because we need a flush.
Yes.
To.
And then we're
Because then we have a water quality issue.
There's balance.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
There's
so,
there's a simple way to, like river water, convert it to potable water. And what you do is, and I was going to do the experiment. You get the river water, you boil it, and you steam it. You take this steam, pass it through ice, and you end up with pure drinking water. Now, you do that at a big scale, like you could have a machine that steams, and there's machines that do steam.
but what happens if we don't have any water there to steam?
Well, I mean, but I'm talking about water,
Yeah,
the drinking water process right now is all these chemicals, right?
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah.
we have our system here, but you may be right, may come to that, hopefully not.
But, so you take
Bunch of,
that, you
oil
can,
burning plants on the river, steaming water and making ice so we can condense it.
Well, it's a-
It may come to that.
it's a concept that it doesn't take any chemicals or anything, it just, you do the, yes.
Yeah,
But you could do it, like say, cold storage, pass through there, on one side you steam it, and the other side you're gonna have drinking water, pure drinking water.
Do you remember in the 70s, who was that gentleman that for years dammed the Rio Grande? Simon.
Yeah.
He was
Oh,
never,
yeah.
you remember,
I was
and
thinking-
those
I was
stickers
thinking
and
of-
Yeah,
damn the Rio Grande?
They would last at every city council meeting, and then we go to Cthulhu's and last to buy them some more about what his points were. And every one of
Damn
them
the
was
Rio
point
Grande.
on.
Because we have a
on.
permit to do it.
Well, yeah, he tried to, they didn't get that far on that
Yeah.
process, but he just advocated for damming the Rio Grande. And if you just think about it, if we, would have been a lot easier to do it in the 70s, because I think it was in the 70s,
Yeah.
right, when he,
Yeah.
I remember his.
And then the
Not a dam, it's a weir.
Weird dam.
We're dam.
No, back
We're not
then,
in it.
it came to a weird, but he was gonna, I mean, his was
We were
more.
gonna generate
he was gonna dam.
electricity, sell it to both sides, and then
That came out
everybody said-
after.
the valley said, oh, you're not, that's
Yeah.
our
And,
river.
and that's something, that's what people down the
Yeah.
stream.
What do you mean you're gonna dam our water?
Yeah, but no, I mean, it was all hell broke
I was so
loose.
excited because we
It
want to have all
was-
this
and he
water
had
to fish
big
on.
stickers, damn the Rio Grande. No, he,
Yeah.
and then the weir came out after that. But no, he wanted to damn the
I
Rio
know,
Grande.
yeah, something sabe,
But again, it's still the Rio Grande Basin. I mean, it helps create more capacity and will have for a while.
Right.
But if the water goes dry, that weir will go
But
dry.
then, I'm glad we did it because we have that headache that we have up there in Eagle Pass, where all the Haitians are going across that weir that they got there. So it was
So the course of action, I guess, would be the city council has already,
Yes, we're
You've given
moving forward
orders?
on doing we've allotted, even in the CIP that we developed, or in the master plan, we identify the sources for the groundwater and studying the options that we can investigate. So we'll come back with recommendations. And that's why getting the committee involved in the master plan, you'll be able to guide us through that, and then we can communicate that through the council and to the public.
But what I really, okay, we've talked about all the things that we need to do. How do we convince the public? We can't convince them with just us talking. We can't convince them with the mayor just talking. We gotta start
You gotta
doing
market it.
PSAs, gotta market it, PSAs, put it out there. This is what you want, this is what's gonna get you, it's gonna cost you a little bit, because the money factor, and everybody goes, wow, they can't afford the water anymore. And then you hear there's a program here to pay for water bill, pay for, so it's all like this, but it's out here, right? And so I think y'all were visited by a crowd talking about water pressure and everything else. Yeah, that new group. So they want attention. We need to give them attention. PSAs.
One of the things, if I may just chime in, one of the things, the master plan is going to be adopted. When it's going to be adopted, they're going to ask, we have a committee that was looking at this. So, if I may suggest, is there's sections of the master plan, right? Maybe dive into each section, just so you guys are knowledgeable on each of those, and then when it's being adopted, that at least, you said, hey, yeah, we took a look into that section, and well, this is...
And secondary water is a big section in our.
Is it, you do have it to where you can incorporate it?
No, it's absolutely.
So it's secondary water, it's CFP, it's
It was one of the first
renewable.
in the task.
So I think at the end of the day, it happened with the it happened with the bridge master plan, right? There was a committee, at the end of the committee, it was about to be adopted, or it's up for presentation, and they asked the committee, Mr. Schrebel, or what's his name? Schrebel, yeah, we were there, Mr. Chairman. That's how it is, right? That's a question that comes, right?
Monterey built a lake in Chinamollo.
And they're fighting for the Rio Conchos,
Exactly.
which is one of the main tributaries for the
Tributary
Rio
to the
Rio Bravo, right? We call it Rio
Bravo.
Bravo.
But Monterey's having major water issues.
Well, because the manufacturing, they use
major
agriculture, manufacturing, they're
But there's not enough water for residential, for the homes.
Southeast of Monterrey, close to
300 feet is the water level?
yeah. I know, I fished it.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that you can't visualize what we're talking about unless you put video on it. And if you look at Powell and Meade and all those lakes up there, God almighty, nobody ever thought that they would be that low today. Because it didn't take overnight. Now, I'll take this back. Amistad, back in the 70s, when they closed it up, we were there one night, one day fished on Friday or Saturday, and it came, it was like a war that night, lightning and everything else. In the morning, we go to the boat ramp, and the Diablo boat ramp was swallowed up. There was a floating pier with a fish house on it, sold stuff and everything else. It was actually underwater. That's how fast it come up. But, the lake was probably half full or whatever it was. And in one night, because of all those rivers that converged to Amistad. But it doesn't happen.
But you don't
today.
have those events at all.
I know it doesn't happen.
And I even
today.
think watersheds change too, because you have pressure, like on the private sector, like lake, that you're talking about, it comes through, major private land. 50, there's 50,000 acres, 100,000 acres, and I'm sure they've put lakes on those tributaries. It's the right of capture, and those water streams are getting pressure.
Yeah.
Any way you look at it.
So with that in mind, we go back to the secondary water source. We ought to have it today in town already.
Right.
If we
It's
look-
gonna cost
look at
more
that-
any way you look at it going
One way or
forward.
the other.
It's
Yeah.
gonna cost, forget about cost, the cost in 5 years, 10 years, just look at what's happened cost-wise in the last 24
And I would
months.
say we need to stay very close to the Texas Water Development Board.
Yes.
Very, very close, to know exactly how they operate, who runs it, if you all have any, and it's politics at the end of it.
Yeah,
It's
it
gotta
is
be
very
accurate.
political.
We've got consultants that are staying on top of that, and then ourselves also for communication.
And one thing, just so you're aware, it's also being considered as a supplemental, not so much a secondary water source, right? Some of the stuff that is being proposed is only supplemental, it's not in its nature secondary. It's not going to be able to sustain
Right.
the city's demand.
It's a good plan.
So just so you guys are aware, I mean,
And
it
to
offsets.
to clarify that, it is two phases. One is the emergency water source. We talked about having an incident on one of the bridges. How long could we sustain the community without actually drawing water from the Rio? We're trying to address that in two ways. One, finding a secondary source, but also taking the excess capacity that we have now, because the city of Laredo consumes approximately 40 million gallons a day. Your plants produce up to 87 million gallons a day. So what do you do with that
Reservoir
extra water?
tanks, it's 3 or 4 days capacity.
That's right,
For example,
so-
we should shut everything down. You know, these reservoir tanks that we have,
Correct.
you know, can just take us.
You have about 2 days right now. We're trying to get that to at least
At
a
least
third
a week.
day by adding additional storage.
Scary. But those are the things that we need to put in front of the public.
And,
You know,
and additional storage requires additional flushing.
That's right.
yeah.
So
You just doubled your water rate by doubling your storage.
In
So that's
the
all
past,
gonna
in the
cost.
past, there was approximately 4 million gallons being flushed a day. In the past, 4 million gallons. So just
You know, it's not easy. I mean, it's not an easy solve to this problem, but it's real. It's here. It's now. It's in front of us. But we need
It's
to
not
sell it to
important
the
until you
public.
don't have it.
Right. Right.
I would ask
then it's
everybody to
pricey.
watch what's going on in the west,
Right?
Right.
because the Orange County Water District just shut down a desal plant. They said no, voted no, and they are in a major drought. They said it's too expensive. So keep reading. They're not gonna do without water. They're gonna find out what are they gonna look for that's less expensive.
And see, that's my
It may come
fear.
back up for another vote. Maybe the public's gonna tell them, no, we want this.
My fear is that these water sources in Dimmitt and Zavala County, in that area, sooner or later, who's gonna come get it? San Antonio. They're gonna get it. They may have the best aquifer there is. But if anything else, just like when we buy water rights on the river, we don't need them, but we wanna have them from someday that we do need them. But if the river's dry, you have all the water rights you want.
San Antonio has that from Hayes Calvo right now.
Yeah.
They have X amount of MGDs a day.
Keep in mind, when you buy, when there's ample supply, it's cheaper. You buy when you truly need it, the price really goes up. So, we truly have to start moving. Well, we've begun the movement, but we have to.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just because we had this discussion this morning amongst the consultants that I'm engaged with, Lockwood Anderson Union, as we're preparing the draft document, we began to look at secondary water in earnest in terms of how we're going to present it to the council and to the community. If you look at San Antonio, for example, they already have a secondary water source. They voted for a project in 2015 called Vista Ridge. That water line is already,
From East Texas, no?
Central Texas.
Hayes
from
Calvo.
Yeah, from Burleson is where the well field is. And they've got a 54-inch pipeline coming into San Antonio. It's already delivering water. But the rates went from $40 to $71 and are scheduled to go up an additional 77% this year.
San Antonio?
San Antonio. So they've gone from one of the lowest rates to exceeding the state's average, and they are far ahead of, they're closer to what Corpus is right now. Corpus is $79 for about 7,500 gallons of water.
And that's per what's the unit, 100,000?
Per thousand, right.
Per thousand.
But in this case, it's
Gallons.
they're talking retail costs, what the consumer's actually paying. For an average of 7,500 gallons in Corpus, you pay $79 for that. San Antonio is going to be at 73 or 77 this year. So you can see the difference in 10 years, what's happened since they
And
voted
what's our
for that.
rate currently here?
Our lowest rate is
I think-
30? I think we're
Yeah.
at 30 for that 7,500 gallon muscle metal slow rate.
It's cheap.
It's cheap. We are one of the lowest rates in the state by far. And no matter how you cook the formula, we're still one of the lowest rates in the
And
state.
yet we're developing and more subdivisions are being created. It's,
But from a public perspective, let me caution you on what I see and hear as your public outreach and stakeholder engagement guy. The public doesn't feel like they're getting any value for their water. Too many water line breaks, too many boil water notices, all these issues. So if you're going to go to them in the next 6 months and say, I need to raise your rates $3-4
Nah,
a month,
nah.
even though that's nothing, right? $3 is nothing compared to San Antonio that raised it $30, $40. They don't want to accept that because the quality of the water isn't there. That's why their team at Ardura is working on this optimization, this water quality program to get us to a superior water rating, so that when you get there, then you can tell the community, yeah, it's worth you paying this money for top
So maybe that's
quality
the
water.
first step.
And that's what you're working. You're already working on that. You've already directed
We
staff.
need to achieve superior water quality, not only at
And
the
then we
state
can sell it,
level,
brother.
and then get recognized as safe drinking water, safe water from the national level.
But that's gonna take at least another 2 years, you think?
18
2
months.
years maybe.
Yeah, the supply chain is not helping, but everything's in motion.
But you've already put that in motion.
Right,
Mayor.
we did.
And so it's important that you all communicate that, because I think the community feels like you're not doing enough.
Yeah, they're not being heard.
And to
That's
some
what they feel.
degree, and this has been my complaint of your public information office and your staff, and not negatively in the sense that they're not working. They have a ton of stuff they have to put out there. But you've not managed to communicate to the community how much you really are doing, how much your staff is really doing with 80 vacancies in the staff, and you're still managing to have only a boil water notice. And when I say only, there are 2 other levels. There's a do not drink, and then there's a do not use. You're getting the lowest warning the TCEQ could give you. And it's usually done as a precautionary measure, not as a punitive measure. It's hey, careful, the water may go bad, right? It's not because they found E. coli or chloroform or any other thing in your water. So how do you communicate that better
Yeah.
from the council perspective?
Better in our socioeconomics. I mean, the reality of things is that 30 to 40% of our population lives under poverty level. Whether they report it to the IRS or not, that's how it's in the IRS, right? So how do you balance the needs that you have for increasing your rates and sustaining your water system, but then tell the people that are below that poverty level and say you got to pay more. So, anyways, it's
Yeah, one correction, and I've been corrected by the economic development director, que ya se fue en efecto. Pero, our poverty has gone down now to about 20 or so. We're still poor, but not as poor as before. It's 1 out of 5 instead of 1 out of 3.
it's
Well, let me tell you, chlorine has gone up 187%.
yeah, no, chlorine is great.
Oh, yeah.
That's one chemical that we use.
Yeah.
Pretty important chemical.
Mr.
And
Mayor, is
that's
there-
just in the last month.
Is there an opportunity on the city council agenda at your regular meeting to bring out some of the discussion we had? Is
Sure.
there-
Usually it's when the water utility Guru has something to report. For example, this master plan. Those are the junctures.
Absolutely.
But we can bring it. Whatever you all recommend too.
And I think we're having the water quality and optimization meeting in June. Where we're gonna present.
Yeah, we'll bring it up.
No te escondas, chico.
Right there. I don't know.
We need good news before we
No,
go forward.
There's good news. Right now, we're maintaining, in fact, what we discussed, the residual, our total chlorine residual is good, even with the temperatures that are high. We've had little hiccups with ammonia increasing, but again, that's the character of our raw water. And then the age of our system, the temperatures. But we're managing it, we're flushing it out of the system. But one thing I did advise the committee here was that we need to be prepared for doing a chlorine conversion, where we have to switch to chlorine. That's in case we have problems where nitrification starts to see that.
And this is the time when
Yes,
those
we
things
typically have
occur.
it.
We just gotta hold it on.
July 4th is typically the
Yeah, we
you don't
all
want to have the
celebrate.
Raiders like you don't want to have so much fun. You don't want to have so much fun.
Chlorine.
No, but-
Take a shower.
But we're not there. We're not there. Water quality is good, and there's sufficient sampling and monitoring in the system. So we're not concerned. It is taken as a last step as part of your nitrification action plan. That's the last step in case we took all the measures. We took all field measures, all administrative measures, and we just didn't fix it. We go into free chlorine conversion, but we're not there yet. It may be used next year as a preventative maintenance, not even as an action to your nitrification action plan, right? That's your ultimate. Before, instead of issuing a boil water notice, you convert. We're not there yet, right? So and through the things that we're doing, we're not gonna, we hope that.
Okay, well, just keep TCEQ.
Don't use that word.
Well, they're gonna
TCEQ.
keep on searching, because it was two boil water notices, third one, this one, and when they're after you, they're after you. But it is our job as as consultants and as a team, right? Everybody, we're doing everything that we need to do. They can look everywhere.
No, but that's the attitude.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Good attitude to have.
I have been communicating with TCQ, they call me, they're out there monitoring, but they have told us that we're maintaining good total usage.
They went out there. They went out there and they were checking, like during the water break. Well, obviously we had an issue with the 36 inch, but they were all right. This is where we can get them, and they started sampling everywhere.
Yeah, and preempt that gentleman that usually comes and says that his filters are all green or whatever.
No, we talked about that. We talked about
They
that.
always check his or close to his area.
Yeah.
That's usually where it starts.
They send him some of the cleaner water,
We have a tank just for him. Just send on them.
You're
Yes.
using that system.
He
that's
gets the RO unit.
pure water. Yeah.
What I'd like to see is some sort of, we have a good communication department. Get some PSAs out there. I mean, I was thinking about years back, because you don't see it as much anymore on TV, where there's going to be a barbecue here, and the public was informed. And it's kind of because of social media. You either have to bombard through Facebook or Snapchat or Twitter or whatever media junk you use. But TV people listen to the news.
Right.
And we're supposed to get about 5 or 10 second spot in there. I know I used to work with them. So, I don't know, we have to turn the attitude around that nobody's doing anything.
No, and I agree. I think we need consistency. For example, if we put something out there and then
Right,
and
right.
then people lose confidence again.
Well, like, no,
So let's build some momentum.
It's difficult. It's difficult to we're regaining that confidence. It's part of the process, right?
No, and then
Boil
what
water
water
has to do
it's
that.
got to be calculated and strategized.
Yeah, no, it needs to be an ongoing thing.
Where these guys can say, we feel pretty good now that we can go another 7-8 months without some incident, which is hard to do.
This is people's attitude, and I refer back to my previous life with the phone company. So we're repairing the cable, and a lady pulls up and says, "My phone's not working." I said, "Yeah, they cut the cable. Why didn't they let us know that we're going to cut the cable, so we're going to make a couple of calls before they cut it on Sunday?" And that's with the water line. "Why didn't you tell me we're going to cut the water line? We could have got some water." They got a backhoe wasn't supposed to dig. They were supposed to dig over there and hit a line.
I didn't know they were gonna be working in the middle of the night.
Or I can't turn around because I got the street blocked off. And that's what I'm getting at. It's always a knee-jerk reaction. And we as a city and as a committee and the council and everything else respond emergency-wise. We don't preempt that we are doing something to improve the status quo and let them know it's going to cost a little more down the road, not today. So, because when we go up on rates, everybody explodes. Especially John Gator, John Gator, he's what, 1.5 million gallons of water?
I don't know. We want to keep him happy. He's our biggest user. He's paying.
This goes.
We're going to start on the wastewater and the sewage también, porque that's also important, and
Yes.
it goes hand in hand.
It's-
But this committee is just strictly on the water, but then.
No, Weather Utilities Commission.
But
We used to be the
But we
water.
have enough of the water, but let's not forget about the.
Yeah,
Wastewater.
water's the one that's up front right now because that's the master plan that's coming out, and then I'll follow up with the wastewater master plan.
I'm in the group.
Yeah.
He's on the
Turn me
grill.
around. Turn me around.
But, water's life. Without a doubt, without water.
Yeah, leave you all to business. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Presidenta. Yeah, no, this gentleman since we were in the 3rd grade, wasn't it?
You grew up with
Third grade.
We have to give a lot of
He dated
thanks to
you.
these gentlemen here. They take a lot of leaders, more so than me or the politicians.
My grandfather was 5'3".
That was gonna get you all firefighters.
My dad was 5'10", I've been 6. And my son's going to be 4.
Yeah, this is
It's like me, I'm not super tall, but I told everybody I exceeded expectations. My dad's 5'5".
Thank you all.
I'm 5'9".
Thank you. Y'all take care. Gracias, Arturo.
Okay.
Take care. Jim, take care. Appreciate it.
I think discussion of goals, let me get that. Number 8, discussion of communication, I think we did the communications. Items for next meeting, if anybody's got anything, please call
I
it
think
in.
for the next meeting, we're gonna discuss the master.
The master plan.
I think that's a good idea.
Mr. Chair, if I could add one more item for you all, as a courtesy for you all as well as for us. Mike's team has put together an exceptional new website for the utilities department. It is currently on a visible public site just for the now. Laredo Water, LaredoWaterWorks.com. Make sure that's the right one.
That's Mike.
It's LaredoWaterWorks.com, right? So we have it on right now?
Yes, that's right.
Laredo Waterworks.
It works.
Let me find out from the team.
Does Laredo Waterworks? Yeah,
Put it back online, put it back on.
Put it on LaredoWaterworks.com.
Turn it on.
Yeah, if you'll go to LaredoWaterworks.com, it's an active site right now. Eventually, it will have the correct domain name on it, but it is an opportunity for some of our folks, some of our peers, to look at the site and to begin to give us some feedback on it. Your team's done a fantastic job already. Kind of commend you on that, Vivian and all the folks that have played a role in it. You're starting to see the things that you all wanted on the website as well. A communications piece that tells you when and all those kind of things.
And it's a lot easier for us to make changes to
Yeah.
ourselves, so we can, it's a working process, so we can grow and add more stuff.
Very dynamic, yeah.
Yeah.
That's important.
Mr. Chairman,
All right.
Yes, sir.
one last thing, if I may. I think I was the one that suggested that each one of us, that's on this committee, ask the person that put us on here to show up. And, I think I got the ball rolling with the mayor, and I'm
Mine's
hopeful,
campaign, so he'll show up.
I'm hopeful that eventually all of us will have our council member join us at a meeting. And so, I hope that happens.
Sounds good. We can't have more than, 4 at one time? Or 3, what is it, 3 or 4?
You don't have 5.
I think that you're on.
For the, city council, maybe
You can't have 5.
5, up to
5 is
5?
a quorum.
No,
5 is a
it was
quorum,
for
so you
4,
can
we
only
can
have
have
4.
4. So if you're gonna invite, let staff know, so let us know. Get excited. So we won't have 5 here and we have to call a city meeting. All right. Okay.
Your
All
next
right.
meeting will be June the 9th.
June 9th.
That's when the national plan is gonna be.
We're gonna have a draft.
The draft,
Maybe not.
by June 1st to staff, and then maybe we can present it to you all by the 9th as well.
Okay.
Maybe not.
So I need a motion to adjourn.
June 9th.
Yeah, just
And second,
Second.
We're gonna do the
all in favor, say
executive.
aye.
something.
The next meeting, June 9th.
Because it is gonna be.
You been traveling?